Your embrace melted my frozen heart. Your care mended more than my body. Your farewell gave me a reason to return. Modern Queen Tales presents The Warmest of Snows. The heavy tires of the Mercedes G-Class chewed through the accumulating snow on the steep incline of the Sierra Nevada highway. The windshield wipers slapped back and forth, smearing thick, wet flakes across the glass. My hands gripped the leather steering wheel. My knuckles shone stark white against my pale skin. A printed stack of bank statements sat on the passenger seat. The numbers glared at me in stark black ink. $6 million. Roy Caldwell, my manager and the man I had dated for 3 years, transferred the funds over 14 months into offshore accounts under a shell corporation. I discovered the discrepancies yesterday morning between wardrobe fittings for a hollow, big-budget action movie I despised. I felt the physical weight of my burnout pressing down on my chest, a crushing pressure built from 10 years of smiling for cameras, starving myself for roles, and trusting the wrong people. Roy owned a secluded ski lodge near the summit of this mountain. I drove up here to throw those papers in his face. I wanted to watch his smug, polished expression shatter. I pushed down on the accelerator. The engine roared. The rear tires lost traction on a sudden, invisible sheet of black ice. The massive SUV swung violently to the right. I slammed my foot on the brake pedal. The vehicle entered an uncontrollable spin. The headlights illuminated a blur of dark pine trunks and falling snow. The steel guardrail rushed toward the windshield. The impact sounded like an explosion of metal and glass. The airbag deployed, striking my face with the force of a concrete wall. The G-Class vaulted over the mangled barrier and plunged down the steep embankment. The world tumbled in a chaotic sequence of crushing impacts. The roof caved inward. The windows shattered, showering me with sharp, frozen fragments. The vehicle slammed into the trunk of a massive sequoia and stopped dead. Silence rushed in, broken only by the hiss of the ruptured radiator. Searing pain radiated from my left arm and my ribs. The crushing weight of the deployed airbag pinned me against the seat. Freezing air poured through the shattered windows. My vision swam with dark spots. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. I closed my eyes and let the darkness pull me under. The smell of wood smoke woke me. Warmth radiated against my right side. Rough, heavy wool blankets covered my body. I opened my eyes to a ceiling of thick, exposed wooden beams. Amber light flickered across the walls from a stone fireplace in the corner. I turned my head. A man sat at a heavy wooden table, peeling an apple with a small hunting knife. He possessed broad shoulders beneath a faded red flannel shirt. Thick, dark hair fell across his forehead. A coarse beard obscured his jawline. His hands moved with precise, deliberate strength. He noticed my movement and set the knife down. He stood and walked to the edge of the bed. He stood well over 6 feet tall. His eyes were a deep, solid brown. "You're awake," he said. His voice rumbled, deep and calm. "Where am I?" My throat felt like dry sandpaper. "My cabin, 3 miles down the ridge from the highway." He picked up an enamel cup from a bedside table and held it to my lips. "Drink." The water tasted metallic and fresh, straight from a well. I swallowed greedily. "My name is Malcolm Andrews," he said. "I found your truck at the bottom of the ravine yesterday evening. I pulled you out before the storm completely buried the wreck." I tried to sit up. A sharp, blinding agony sliced through my chest. I gasped and fell back against the pillows. "Don't move," Malcolm instructed. "You have 3 broken ribs. Your left forearm is fractured. I set the bone and splinted it. I wrapped your chest. You have a concussion and a deep laceration on your forehead." I looked down. 2 pieces of smooth wood flanked my left arm, bound tightly with strips of clean white linen. "You need to call an ambulance," I whispered. "I need to call the police." "I don't have a phone," Malcolm said. "I don't have electricity. The blizzard dumped 4 feet of snow on the mountain overnight. The pass is blocked. Nobody is coming up here, and we aren't going down." He walked over to a cast-iron stove and lifted a pot. The rich scent of chicken broth filled the small cabin. He poured the liquid into a wooden bowl, brought it to the bed, and sat on the edge of the mattress. He dipped a wooden spoon into the broth and offered it to me. I opened my mouth and accepted the food. The warmth spread through my chest, soothing the raw ache inside me. I watched his face. He held no recognition in his eyes. He saw a broken woman in a snowstorm. He did not see Stella Norrington, the highest-paid actress of the year. He did not see the face from the billboards on Sunset Boulevard. "Thank you," I said softly. "Rest," he replied. "Your body needs time to mend." Time slowed down to the rhythm of the rising sun and the crackling fire. The blizzard raged for 5 days, burying the cabin up to the windowsills. Malcolm maintained a steady, quiet routine. He chopped wood outside, the rhythmic thwack of his axe echoing through the frozen air. He hauled water from a covered well. He cooked simple, hearty meals over the fire. I spent the first week drifting in and out of a painkiller-induced haze. Malcolm gave me willow bark tea and herbal tinctures that dulled the sharp edges of my injuries. He changed my bandages with gentle, calloused fingers. His touch possessed a reassuring competence. As my mind cleared and the pain subsided to a dull ache, I began to observe my surroundings. The cabin consisted of one large room, built entirely by hand. Hand-carved chairs sat around the sturdy table. Books lined the walls, leather-bound volumes of history, philosophy, and agriculture. Jars of preserved vegetables, dried meats, and herbs filled the open pantry shelves. On the 8th day, I swung my legs over the edge of the bed and stood up. The floorboards felt cold beneath my bare feet. I took a deep breath, braced my ribs, and walked slowly to the small window. A vast expanse of untouched white snow blanketed the world. Towering pines stooped under the weight of the ice. Malcolm opened the heavy oak door and stepped inside, carrying an armful of split logs. He kicked the door shut and stomped the snow from his boots. He paused when he saw me standing. "You should be resting," he said. "I need to move," I told him. "I feel suffocated lying there." He set the logs by the fireplace and walked toward me. He stopped 2 feet away, looking down into my face. "You have color in your cheeks today," he observed. "I feel stronger." I looked at his hands. Dirt lined his knuckles. "Tell me about this place. Tell me about you." He gestured to the 2 chairs by the hearth. We sat down. The fire warmed the front of my legs. "I bought this acreage 10 years ago," Malcolm said. "I worked as a structural engineer in Chicago. I built skyscrapers. I lived in glass boxes. I spent my days in meetings discussing profit margins and steel tensile strength. I realized I hated every second of it. I hated the noise. I hated the concrete. I bought the land, drove out here, and built the cabin. I grow my own food. I hunt. I read. You live completely alone." "Yes." I looked at the dancing flames. I lived surrounded by people, assistants, managers, publicists, makeup artists, fans. Millions of people looked at me every day. I felt completely empty. I felt like a product on a shelf. Malcolm leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "What do you do?" "I act in movies." I gave him my name, Stella Norrington. He nodded slowly. "I haven't seen a movie in a decade." I don't know who you are." A profound sense of relief washed over me. I smiled. A genuine, unguarded smile. That is the best thing anyone has ever said to me. Weeks turned into a month. The deep winter held the mountain in its icy grip. My ribs healed. Malcolm removed the splint from my arm. The bone ached, but the strength slowly returned. I integrated myself into his life. I learned to knead bread dough with my good hand. I learned to tend the fire. I swept the floor. I watched him mend his snowshoes and sharpen his tools. We talked for hours in the evenings. We discussed the books on his shelves. We talked about the migration patterns of the elk. We talked about the structural integrity of the cabin's roof. We never talked about Hollywood. We never talked about Roy Caldwell or the stolen $6 million. My burnout faded. The relentless anxiety that plagued my life in Los Angeles vanished. I slept soundly through the night. I woke up with a clear mind and a sense of purpose. I loved the smell of the pine trees. I loved the physical exertion of hauling water. I fell in love with Malcolm. I watched the muscles in his back flex beneath his shirt when he chopped wood. I watched the focused intensity in his eyes when he read by the firelight. I felt the deep, rumbling vibration of his chest when he laughed at my attempts to identify animal tracks in the snow. One evening, late in February, a fierce wind rattled the cabin windows. We sat on the rug in front of the fireplace, playing a game of chess on a hand-carved wooden board. I reached out to move my knight. My hand brushed against his. I froze. He turned his hand over and laced his fingers through mine. His skin felt rough and warm. He looked up from the board. The air in the cabin grew thick and heavy. He leaned in. I closed my eyes. His lips touched mine. The kiss started slow and cautious, an exploration of boundaries. I leaned forward, pressing my chest against his. The kiss deepened. A surge of pure, primal heat ignited in my belly. He pulled back slightly, his breathing ragged. He cupped my face in both of his large hands. "Stella," he whispered. "Don't stop," I answered. He stood up, pulling me with him. He lifted me effortlessly into his arms and carried me to the bed. The heavy wool blankets fell away. The firelight cast long shadows across our skin. We made love with a desperate, urgent intensity. His hands mapped every contour of my body. He possessed me with a fierce, protective strength. I dug my fingers into his shoulders, anchoring myself to him. I felt grounded, real, and entirely consumed by the man holding me. Spring arrived in late March. The snow began to melt, turning the mountain streams into raging torrents. The heavy drifts receded, exposing the brown earth and the first green shoots of alpine grass. "The pass is clear enough for the truck," Malcolm announced one morning over breakfast. "I need to drive down to the supply post in the valley. I need seed for the garden, salt, and kerosene." "I'll come with you," I said. He shook his head. "The road is treacherous, deep mud and washouts. You stay here. I will be back by nightfall." I agreed. I spent the day deep cleaning the cabin. I aired out the blankets, scrubbed the table, and prepared a venison roast in the Dutch oven. Malcolm returned just as the sun dipped below the ridgeline. He carried 2 heavy canvas sacks into the cabin and dropped them on the floor. His face looked grim. His jaw was clenched tight. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded newspaper. He dropped it onto the wooden table. "I bought this at the general store," he said. His voice sounded cold and tight. "You need to look at it." I walked over to the table and flattened the paper. The masthead belonged to the Los Angeles Times. The date printed at the top read, March 22nd. My face occupied the entire front page. The bold black headline screamed, "Stella Norrington declared dead. Manager launches foundation to catch killer." I stared at the words. The blood drained from my face. My heart hammered against my ribs. I read the article. Roy Caldwell reported me missing 2 days after the blizzard. He told the police I received death threats from an obsessed fan. A week later, search and rescue found my wrecked SUV at the bottom of the ravine. They found blood on the steering wheel, but no body. Roy spun a massive, elaborate lie. He claimed the stalker ambushed me on the road, ran me off the cliff, and took my body. He held a televised press conference, crying on camera, begging for information. He convinced a judge to declare me legally dead due to the overwhelming evidence of foul play and the harsh elements. Then came the final, devastating blow. Roy inherited control of my estate as my primary beneficiary. He liquidated my assets. He took the $6 million he had already stolen, added the remaining $40 million from my accounts, and funneled it all into the Stella Norrington Memorial Foundation. He was actively raising millions more from my grieving fans and industry colleagues. The police arrested a 19-year-old college student from Ohio. The boy wrote me fan letters. Roy planted evidence my stolen jewelry in the boy's dorm room. Rage, pure and blinding, erupted in my chest. Roy stole my money. He stole my life. Now he was destroying an innocent kid to cover his tracks and line his pockets. I looked up at Malcolm. He stood by the fire, watching me. "He declared me dead," I said. My voice shook with fury. "He framed a kid for my murder." "What do you want to do?" Malcolm asked. "I have to go back. I have to stop him." Malcolm walked over and placed his hands on my shoulders. His grip felt solid and reassuring. "I will drive you to Los Angeles." "No," I said, stepping back. "I have to do this alone. If you come with me, they will drag you into the media circus. They will ruin your peace. They will ruin this place." He looked at me, a muscle feathering in his jaw. "I don't care about the peace. I care about you." "I need your truck," I told him. "I will come back. I promise you, Malcolm. I will come back here. But I have to end this first." He stared into my eyes for a long moment, searching for any hesitation. He found none. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the brass keys to his heavy-duty Dodge pickup. He pressed them into my palm. "Bring my truck back, Stella," he said. The drive to Los Angeles took 9 hours. I left the mountains behind and descended into the smog-choked basin of the city. The noise assaulted my ears. The glaring neon lights burned my eyes. I felt like an alien returning to a hostile planet. I wore Malcolm's spare clothes, baggy jeans, a gray thermal shirt, and heavy work boots. My hair hung loose and unstyled. A pale pink scar ran across my forehead. I possessed no ID, no money, and no phone. I drove straight to the Wilshire Boulevard Police Precinct. I parked the mud-caked Dodge in a red zone right in front of the glass doors. I walked into the bright, sterile lobby. A bored-looking desk sergeant sat behind thick, reinforced glass. I walked up to the speaker slot. "I need to speak to the lead detective on the Stella Norrington murder case," I said. The sergeant looked up, annoyed. "Case is closed, miss. Suspect is awaiting trial." "The suspect is innocent," I said, leaning closer to the glass. "Roy Caldwell framed him." The sergeant sighed heavily. "Look, lady, if you have a tip, call the hotline." I pushed my hair back from my face. I stared directly into his eyes. "Look at my face. I am Stella Norrington. I am not dead." The sergeant froze. His eyes widened. The color drained from his face. He scrambled backward in his rolling chair, knocking a stack of files onto the floor. He grabbed his radio. Within 3 minutes, 4 detectives rushed into the lobby. They surrounded me, their expressions a mix of disbelief and shock. Detective Miller, a tall man with graying temples who had appeared on the news with Roy, stepped forward. "Miss Norrington?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Roy Caldwell embezzled $6 million from my accounts," I stated clearly. "I found out. I drove to his cabin to confront him. My car crashed in the blizzard. I survived. Roy used the crash to declare me dead, steal the rest of my fortune, and frame an innocent teenager." Miller swallowed hard. "We need to get you into an interview room." I sat in the windowless room for 3 hours. I gave a detailed, exhaustive statement. I provided the account numbers I had memorized from the printed bank statements. I explained the timeline. I let the police medical examiner document my healed injuries. "Caldwell is hosting a massive memorial gala tonight at the Beverly Hills Hotel," Detective Miller told me. "He's soliciting donations for the foundation. The mayor is there. Half of Hollywood is there." "I want to go," I said. Miller smiled, a hard, predatory grimace. "We were hoping you would say that." The Beverly Hills Hotel ballroom dripped with crystal chandeliers and white lilies. Hundreds of people wore somber black formal wear. Photographers clustered around the perimeter, snapping pictures of weeping actresses and stoic producers. Roy Caldwell stood at the center of the stage. He wore a custom-tailored black tuxedo. He held a microphone. A massive projector screen behind him displayed a montage of my movie roles. Set to mournful classical music, I stood in the shadows of the service hallway, flanked by Detective Miller and 4 uniformed officers. "Stella was a light taken from us too soon," Roy said into the microphone. His voice broke perfectly. He wiped a solitary, manufactured tear from his cheek. "The violence of her end breaks my heart every day. But through this foundation, we will ensure her legacy lives on. We will find justice, and we will support the causes she loved." The crowd erupted into sympathetic applause. "Now," Miller whispered. I pushed through the heavy velvet curtains and stepped out into the blinding glare of the spotlights. I walked slowly down the center aisle. I still wore Malcolm's oversized clothes and heavy boots. I looked wild, bruised, and intensely alive. The applause died. A heavy, suffocating silence slammed into the ballroom. Heads turned, eyes bulged. Someone in the front row dropped a champagne flute. The crystal shattered loudly against the marble floor. I kept my eyes locked on Roy. He stood frozen at the podium. His mouth hung open in a silent, slack-jawed scream. The microphone slipped from his fingers and hit the stage with an ear-splitting squeal of feedback. His perfect tan turned the color of old ash. I walked up the short flight of stairs onto the stage. I stopped 3 feet from him. "Hello, Roy," I said. My voice echoed across the silent room without a microphone. "Stella," he choked out. He took a step backward. He looked like a man staring at a ghost. You're dead!" "No," I replied, stepping closer. "I survived. I survived the crash, and I survived you." The flashbulbs erupted. A blinding storm of white light illuminated the stage. The press corps broke out of their shock and began screaming questions. Detective Miller walked onto the stage, followed by the uniformed officers. Miller pulled a pair of heavy steel handcuffs from his belt. "Roy Caldwell," Miller announced, his voice carrying over the chaos. "You are under arrest for grand theft, fraud, filing a false police report, and obstruction of justice." An officer grabbed Roy's arms and wrenched them behind his back. The metal cuffs clicked shut with a sharp, final sound. Roy locked eyes with me as they dragged him away from the podium. His face twisted into a mask of pure terror and defeat. He lost everything in a matter of seconds. I watched them march him down the aisle and out the double doors. A reporter from CNN pushed her way to the edge of the stage, shoving a microphone toward my feet. Stella, Miss Norrington, where have you been? What happened? I walked over and picked up the microphone Roy had dropped. I tapped it once. The sound boomed through the speakers. Roy Caldwell is a thief and a liar, I announced to the room and the rolling cameras. He stole my money, and he tried to steal my life. The young man currently in jail is innocent. I expect the district attorney to release him immediately. I looked out over the crowd of shocked faces. I saw directors I worked with, publicists who manipulated me, actors who smiled to my face and stabbed me in the back. I felt nothing for any of them. The glittering illusion of Hollywood lay dead at my feet. Effective immediately, I am retiring from acting, I declared. My estate will refund every dollar donated to that fraudulent foundation. I am liquidating my remaining assets. You will never see me on a screen again. I dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a dull thud. I turned around, walked down the stairs, and exited through the service doors. The lawyers handled the mess over the next 3 days. The district attorney released the college student and dropped all charges. The judge froze Roy's accounts and seized the embezzled funds. Roy remained in county jail without bail, facing 20 years in federal prison. I sold my mansion in Bel Air to a tech billionaire. I fired my entire team. I bought the thousands of acres of mountain ridge surrounding Malcolm's property, ensuring no developer or logging company could ever touch the land. On the 4th morning, I climbed back into the heavy Dodge pickup. I filled the bed with supplies, new tools, heavy winter coats, flour, sugar, and coffee. I drove out of the city. I watched the smog give way to clear blue skies. The flat highway turned into winding mountain roads. The temperature dropped. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. My heart beat with a steady, joyous rhythm. I navigated the dirt road leading to the ridge. The trees parted. The cabin sat in the clearing, sturdy and permanent against the backdrop of the towering peaks. Smoke curled from the stone chimney. Malcolm stood on the porch. He wore his red flannel shirt. His hands rested on his hips. He watched the truck pull into the yard and come to a stop. I killed the engine, opened the door, and stepped out onto the dirt. I walked toward the porch. Malcolm walked down the wooden steps to meet me. He looked at my face, tracing the lines of my expression. "You did it," he said. "He's in jail. The kid is free. I'm done with all of it," I told him. "I bought the mountain." Malcolm smiled. The expression transformed his rough face, filling his dark eyes with immense warmth. He reached out and pulled me against his chest. I wrapped my arms around his waist and buried my face in his shoulder. He smelled of wood smoke and clean air. "Welcome home, Stella," he murmured against my hair. I squeezed him tighter. I closed my eyes. I was exactly where I belonged. The end.
If you enjoyed this quick escape, hit the subscribe button for new stories twice a week. Until then, I'll see you at the next flip of the pages.